He'd lost everything once, his wife, his daughter, his faith in tomorrow. But on this rain-soaked Tuesday morning in Millbrook, while racing to his construction job in a truck held together by rust and determination, Marcus didn't know that stopping for a stranger drowning in her flooded BMW would bring back the one thing he thought was gone forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She was Virginia Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries, one of the most powerful women in the country, and she had information about his daughter Emma that would change everything. But first, she had to survive the flood that was about to claim her life. The storm had been brewing for 3 days, turning Millbrook's usually gentle Clearwater Creek into a raging torrent that swallowed parking lots and crept up storefronts like hungry fingers. Marcus Rodriguez had seen worse weather during his 8 years in this small Pennsylvania town, but nothing quite like this. The rain hammered his windshield with such fury that his wipers, already on their last legs, could barely keep up. At 32, Marcus carried the weight of a man much older. His shoulders, broad from years hauling steel beams and concrete blocks, curved slightly inward as if protecting something fragile within. His calloused hands gripped the steering wheel of his 2003 Ford pickup. Its blue paint chipped and faded to the color of old denim. The truck groaned as he navigated through the flooded streets, its engine coughing like an old man with too many years of cigarettes behind him. The radio crackled with emergency bulletins. Authorities are urging all non-essential personnel to stay indoors. Route 19 is completely impassable, and emergency services are reporting multiple water rescues throughout the county. Marcus reached over and turned the volume down. He'd already called his foreman about the delay, but Hendricks Construction needed every job they could get, and Marcus needed every hour. The medical bills from last year still sat in a cardboard box on his kitchen counter, a monument to everything he couldn't afford to fix. As he rounded the corner onto Maple Street, something caught his eye through the gray curtain of rain. A black shape, angular and wrong, sat partially submerged in what used to be the parking lot of the old Riverside shopping center. The water here was easily 4 feet deep, turning the asphalt into a temporary lake. Marcus slowed the truck, squinting through the downpour. It was a car, an expensive one by the looks of it. A BMW sedan sat trapped in the flood, its hood barely visible above the brown water that churned with debris, shopping bags, and tree branches. The vehicle's hazard lights blinked desperately, their orange glow diffused by the murky water lapping. At the windows, Marcus's first instinct was to keep driving. He'd learned the hard way that good intentions didn't pay bills or bring back what was lost. But then he saw movement inside the car, a shadow against the glass, and something deeper than logic kicked in. He pulled his truck to the edge of the dry pavement and grabbed his rain jacket from behind the seat. The water was shockingly cold, even through his work boots. Each step was treacherous, the current stronger than it looked, pushing against. His legs with surprising force. Pieces of trash and fallen branches bumped against him as he waded deeper, the water rising from his knees to his waist. His phone, tucked in a waterproof case in his jacket pocket, felt like it weighed 100 pounds. As he got closer to the BMW, he could see her more clearly. A woman, maybe in her 40s, pressed against the driver's side window. Her face was pale with panic, her mouth moving in words he couldn't hear over the storm. The water inside the car had risen to her chest, and it was still climbing. Marcus reached the vehicle and rapped his knuckles against the glass. The woman's eyes wide with terror locked onto his. She pointed frantically at the door handle, her lips forming the word locked. The car's electrical systems had failed, trapping her inside as surely as if it were a steel coffin. He circled the car, looking for options. The windows were tinted, making it hard to see if there was anything inside he could use. The water continued to rise, now reaching his chest. In the distance he could hear sirens, but they sounded far away, muffled by the storm and echoing off the buildings. This woman didn't have time to wait for the fire department. Marcus waded back to his truck, his movements urgent but controlled. In the bed, beneath a tarp he'd forgotten to tie down properly, sat his toolbox. His hands shook slightly as he fumbled with the latches, finally pulling out a small sledgehammer. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. The return trip to the car felt like swimming through molasses. The current had grown stronger, and twice he nearly lost his footing on the submerged parking lot. But he made it back to the BMW, where the woman watched him approach with desperate hope in her eyes. Marcus held up the hammer, pointing to the passenger side window. The woman nodded frantically and moved away from that side of the car as best she could in the rising water. He took a deep breath, steadied himself against the vehicle, and swung. The first blow sent spiderweb cracks across the safety glass. The second shattered it completely, sending water rushing into the car even faster, but it also created an opening. Marcus dropped the hammer and used his jacket to clear away the remaining glass, creating a passage large enough for her to escape. Through. The woman didn't hesitate. She pushed herself through the window with more grace than should have been possible given the circumstances, moving like someone accustomed to handling crises. Marcus caught her arms as she emerged, steadying her in the churning water. She was smaller than she'd appeared in the car, probably 5'6", with graying brown hair plastered to her head and wearing what had once been an expensive charcoal gray suit. "Thank you," she gasped, gripping his arms with surprising strength. "Thank you so much." "We're not safe yet," Marcus replied, already scanning for the quickest route to dry ground. The water had risen another few inches, just in the time it had taken him to free her. "Can you swim?" "Yes," she said, though her voice carried a tremor that might have been cold or fear or both. Together they made their way back toward his truck. The current fought them every step, and twice the woman stumbled only to be caught by Marcus's steady grip. When they finally reached the edge of the flooding, both were exhausted and shivering. Marcus helped her into the passenger seat of his truck, then climbed behind the wheel. He cranked the heat up as high as it would go and handed her a clean shop rag from his glove compartment. "For your hair," he said simply. She accepted it gratefully, pressing the cloth against her face first before attempting to dry her hair. In the cab's dim light, Marcus got his first real look at her. Despite being soaked and shaken, there was something composed about her, an underlying strength that hadn't been broken by her ordeal. Her hands, he noticed, bore no rings, but there was a slight tan line on her left ring finger suggesting one. Had been there recently. "I'm Virginia," she said after a moment, her voice stronger now. "Virginia Blackwood." The name meant nothing to Marcus, though something about the way she said it suggested it should. "Marcus Rodriguez. You heard anywhere?" She shook her head, then paused, wincing slightly as she shifted in the seat. "Just my pride, mostly. And maybe my ribs where the seatbelt dug in." She looked out the windshield at her submerged BMW, its roof now barely visible above the waterline. "That was my grandfather's car. He bought it the day he made his first million." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. His own truck was worth maybe $2,000 on a good day, and that was being generous. Instead, he focused on practical matters. "Where can I take you? Home? Hospital?" Virginia paused, and for the first time since he'd pulled her from the car, uncertainty flickered across her features. "I'm not sure. I was driving up from the city for a meeting, but obviously that's not happening now." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Do you know if there's a decent hotel nearby that might still have power? The Holiday Inn on Route 15 probably does. They've got a backup generator. Marcus put the truck in drive. windshield wipers still battling the relentless rain. But honestly, in this weather, you might be safer waiting it out somewhere closer. Virginia was quiet for a moment, studying him with an intensity that made Marcus slightly uncomfortable. There was something calculating in her gaze, not cold exactly, but appraising. "You didn't have to stop," she said finally. "Most people would have kept driving." Marcus shrugged, navigating around a fallen tree branch. "Most people haven't been where you were." "And where's that?" "Feeling like you're drowning." Something shifted in Virginia's expression, a wall coming down slightly. "You sound like you speak from experience." Marcus didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the rhythm of the wipers and the drum of rain on the roof. Finally he said, "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. And I lost my daughter in the custody battle afterward. Her grandparents had better lawyers." He hadn't meant to say that. These were details he kept locked away, stories he didn't share with neighbors or co-workers or anyone really, but something about this woman, soaked and shivering in his passenger seat, had loosened his tongue. "I'm sorry," Virginia said softly. "That must have been devastating." "Yeah, well," Marcus cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. "Point is, sometimes life puts you underwater, and you need someone to throw you a line. Today you needed one. Next time maybe I will." Virginia nodded slowly, but Marcus caught her studying him again in his peripheral vision. They drove in relative quiet for a few minutes, the storm gradually lessening from a full assault to a steady downpour. The radio continued its litany of weather warnings and emergency updates, but Marcus had stopped listening. "Marcus," Virginia said as they approached the hotel turnoff, "I know this might sound strange, but what's your daughter's name?" The question caught him off guard, almost causing him to miss the turn. Emma Rodriguez. Why?" Virginia's hand stilled in her lap. "How old is she now?" "She'll be 12 next month." Marcus frowned, glancing over at her. "Why are you asking about my daughter?" For a long moment, Virginia didn't respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful, measured. "I run a company called Blackwood Industries. We do a lot of different things, but one of our divisions handles family services, reunification specifically. We help families that have been separated by circumstances." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach that had nothing to do with his wet clothes. What kind of circumstances? Legal battles, international custody disputes. Sometimes we help locate family members who have been displaced. Virginia turned to face him fully. "Marcus, I think I might know where your daughter is." The truck swerved slightly as Marcus's grip tightened on the wheel. He pulled into the hotel parking lot and put the vehicle in park, his hands trembling slightly. "What did you just say?" Virginia reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a waterlogged phone. Despite the soaking it had taken, she managed to power it on. 3 months ago, we received a case from a social services agency in Vermont. A 12-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez, placed in foster care after her legal guardians were arrested for fraud. Marcus stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. "That's impossible. Emma's with her grandparents in Colorado. They have custody." "No," Virginia said gently. "They lost custody 6 months ago. Marcus, your daughter has been in the system since then. She's been looking for you." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He gripped the steering wheel, so hard his knuckles went white. "You're lying. That can't be true. I would have known. Someone would have told me." Virginia's expression was sympathetic but firm. "The grandparents lied to everyone involved. They told the courts you were unfit, dangerous, They told Emma you didn't want to see her, and when they were arrested, she had no way to contact you because she didn't even know your real address. Marcus felt the world tilting around him. 3 years. 3 years he'd respected the legal boundaries, stayed away because he thought it was what was best for Emma. 3 years he'd worked extra shifts to pay child support to grandparents who apparently no longer even had her. 3 years his daughter had been alone, thinking he'd abandoned her. "Where is she?" he managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. "A group home in Rutland, Vermont." Virginia leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Marcus, I can help you get her back. My company has resources, legal connections. We can cut through the red tape, expedite the process." "Why?" Marcus looked at her, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Virginia smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Because 5 minutes ago, you risked your life to save mine without asking for anything in return. Because I recognize what it looks like when someone's drowning and it's not always in water." She paused, her fingers worrying at the edge of the shop rag. "And because I know what it's like to lose family. My own daughter died 10 years ago. Leukemia. If I can help reunite someone else's family, maybe it makes her loss mean something." Marcus sat in stunned silence, watching raindrops race down the windshield. Everything felt surreal, like he'd stepped into someone else's life. This morning, he'd been just another construction worker struggling to make ends meet. And now this. Woman was telling him his daughter, the daughter he'd grieved as lost to him forever, was not only alive but searching for him. "I can't afford lawyers," he said finally, the practical part of his mind kicking in despite the emotional chaos. "I barely make enough to cover my own rent." "You won't need to pay for anything," Virginia assured him. "Consider it a debt paid. Forward. You gave me my life back today. Let me help you get yours back too." Marcus looked at her. This woman who'd appeared out of the storm like some kind of guardian angel. Part of him wondered if this was real or if he'd hit his head during the rescue and was hallucinating in a hospital bed somewhere. But the ache in his chest, the hole that had been there since the day he'd last seen Emma, was real. And for the first time in 3 years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. "If this is true," he said slowly, "if Emma really is in Vermont, and you can help, what's the catch? What do you want in return?" Virginia was quiet for a moment, and Marcus saw something flicker across her face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Just the chance to do something right," she said softly. "I've spent a lot of years building my company, making money, accumulating power. But none of that brought my daughter back. None of that filled the empty space she left behind." She met his eyes. "Maybe helping you get Emma back won't fill that space either, but maybe it'll make it hurt a little less." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. They were both orphaned from the people they'd loved most, both learning to navigate a world that felt permanently off balance. But maybe, just maybe, they could help each other find solid ground again. The rain was finally beginning to ease, the drumming on the roof softening to a gentle patter. Emergency vehicles passed by on the road, their lights painting the inside of the truck in alternating reds and blues. In the distance, Marcus could see the water in the shopping center parking lot beginning to recede, though Virginia's BMW remained, stubbornly submerged. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. "How do we do this?" Virginia pulled out her phone again, scrolling through contacts with fingers that only shook slightly. "First, I make some calls. I have people who can verify Emma's location and status by the end of the day. Then we start the legal process to establish your rights as her father and petition for immediate placement." "How long will that take?" "Normally, months. Sometimes years." Virginia's smile was more confident now, the businesswoman reasserting. herself after the vulnerable moment. But I didn't become one of the most successful CEOs in the country by accepting normal timelines. I have friends in family court, relationships with child welfare agencies. If Emma really is your daughter, and she wants to come home, we'll make it happen quickly. Marcus felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Men like him didn't cry in front of strangers, even strangers who might be about to change his life. I need to call work. Tell them I'm not coming in. Take all the time you need. In fact, take the rest of the week. When we get Emma back, you'll want to be available for her. When we get her back, Marcus repeated, testing the words. They felt fragile, like soap bubbles that might pop if he held them too tightly. You really think we can do this? Virginia reached out and placed her hand over his. Her skin still cold from the floodwater, but her grip firm and reassuring. Marcus, I didn't survive a hostile takeover of my father's company at 25, build a billion-dollar corporation from scratch, and live through losing my child just to give up on reuniting yours. We're going to bring Emma home. Something in her voice, in the steel beneath the sympathy, made Marcus believe her. Here was a woman accustomed to getting what she wanted, and for reasons he still didn't fully understand. She wanted to help him. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was grief, maybe it was just the simple human connection forged in the moment when one person saves another. But whatever her motivation, Marcus found himself trusting her completely. "Okay," he said, his voice stronger than he'd heard it in years. "Let's bring my daughter home." Outside, the storm was finally breaking apart. Shafts of sunlight beginning to pierce through the grey clouds. The floodwaters continued to recede, revealing the damage left behind, but also the promise of recovery. Marcus looked at Virginia, this unexpected savior who'd crash-landed into his life, and for the first time since Emma had been taken from him, he allowed himself to believe that sometimes miracles came disguised as ordinary Tuesday mornings. And sometimes, saving someone else was the first step towards saving yourself. The days that followed blurred together like watercolors in the rain. Virginia had been true to her word, working with the efficiency of someone accustomed to moving. Mountains with nothing more than a series of phone calls and strategic leveraging of favors owed. Marcus found himself pulled into a whirlwind of legal documents, conference calls with social workers, and conversations that felt too surreal to be happening in his modest duplex on Elm Street. The verification had come within 24 hours, just as Virginia promised. Emma Rodriguez, age 11 years and 10 months, currently residing at Sunshine Valley Group Home in Rutland, Vermont. The photograph that accompanied the file had hit Marcus like a sledgehammer to the chest. His little girl, no longer little, staring back at him from a computer screen with eyes that held too much sadness for someone who should still believe in fairy tales. Virginia had handled everything from her suite at the Millbrook Grand Hotel, which she'd moved to after the Holiday Inn proved too noisy for the delicate negotiations required. She'd arranged for her own legal team to fly in from New York, had Marcus's parental rights reviewed by experts in family law, and somehow managed to expedite court dates that typically took months to secure. Marcus sat in his kitchen now, staring at the latest stack of papers Virginia's assistant had delivered. Somewhere between the affidavits and custody petitions, his simple life had become something unrecognizable. The construction work that had been his anchor for years suddenly felt insignificant compared to the possibility of getting Emma back. He'd called in sick for the third day running, and his foreman was getting impatient. The knock at his door came at exactly 9 in the morning, as Virginia had promised the night before. Marcus opened it to find her standing on his weathered porch, looking every inch the successful CEO despite her concessions to small-town casualness. She wore dark jeans and a cream-colored blazer, her hair pulled back in a low ponytail. Without, The chaos of the flood between them, Marcus could see her more clearly. She moved with the precise confidence of someone used to having her words listened to and her decisions acted upon without question. "May I come in?" she asked, though she was already stepping past him into the small hallway. "I have news about Emma." Marcus's stomach clenched. After 3 days of legal maneuvering and bureaucratic navigation, he'd learned that news could go either way. Good news or bad news. The kind that's both, depending on how you look at it. Virginia set her leather briefcase on his kitchen table, the same table where he'd eaten countless solitary dinners over the past 3 years. "The good news is that the judge has agreed to an expedited hearing. We're going to court tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Marcus felt the room spin slightly. "That's incredibly fast. That's what happens when you know the right people and you're willing to call in favors that have been accumulating interest for years." Virginia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "The bad news is that Emma's case is more complicated than we initially thought." Marcus poured himself coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. He didn't offer Virginia any. She'd already refused twice during previous visits, explaining that she didn't drink caffeine after 5 in the morning. It was one of many small details about her that revealed glimpses of a life lived with rigid self-discipline. "What kind of complications?" he asked, settling across from her at the table. Virginia spread several documents between them. Emma's grandparents, the Hoffmans, didn't just lose custody due to fraud. They lost it because Emma herself petitioned the court for removal from their home. Marcus set his coffee down too hard, sloshing dark liquid onto the documents. "What? Why?" According to the social worker's notes, there were allegations of emotional abuse, nothing physical but psychological manipulation. They were telling her things about you, about your wife, that were designed to make her compliant and dependent on them. Virginia's voice remained professionally neutral, but Marcus caught the hint of anger beneath the surface. "They convinced her that you'd signed over your rights voluntarily, that you wanted nothing to do with her." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He'd spent 3 years honoring what he'd thought was the Hoffmans' legal custody, respecting the boundaries imposed by family court. He'd written letters he was forbidden to send, saved money for a college fund he wasn't sure he'd ever be allowed to contribute to, and carried Emma's picture in his wallet like a talisman against forgetting. "But she found out the truth," Virginia continued. "A social worker showed her the real custody documents, explained what had actually happened. That's when Emma asked to be removed from their home." "So she knows I didn't abandon her?" "She knows. But Marcus, she's been in the system for 8 months now. She's been through 2 foster placements that didn't work out before ending up at Sunshine Valley. She's built walls, emotional defenses. Getting your daughter back legally is only the first step." Marcus rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the weight of years he'd lost with Emma settle on his shoulders. "Tell me about the group home." Virginia pulled out another set of papers, these marked with the logo of Blackwood Industries. "I sent a team to evaluate the facility. It's well run, the staff is competent, but it's still institutional. Emma shares a room with 3 other girls, follows a strict schedule, has limited privacy. She's described by her counselors as smart, artistic, but withdrawn. She doesn't trust easily anymore." And the description painted a picture so different from the Emma Marcus remembered that it might as well have been describing a stranger. His Emma had been fearless, constantly chattering, always ready with a hug or a silly joke. The child in these reports sounded like she'd learned to make herself small, invisible. "What does she know about tomorrow?" Marcus asked. "About the hearing." "Her social worker has informed her that there will be a custody review. Emma knows someone is trying to get custody of her. But we thought it best that she learn it's you from you directly, not from a caseworker's report." Marcus nodded, though his stomach churned at the thought. How do you reintroduce yourself to your own child? How do you bridge years of separation and misunderstanding with a conversation in a sterile courthouse hallway? Virginia seemed to rid his thoughts. Marcus, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow's hearing isn't guaranteed to go our way. Family court judges are cautious, especially when they're dealing with a child who's already been through trauma. They'll want to see evidence of stability, of your ability to provide for Emma emotionally and financially. I can provide for her, Marcus said, defensive. I've got a steady job. This house is paid for. I've been saving money for years, thinking I might get a chance like this. I know you can, but perception matters as much as reality in these situations. Virginia pulled out a final document, this one bearing an official seal, which is why I've taken the liberty of making some arrangements. Marcus scanned the paper, his confusion growing with each line. What is this? It's a job offer. Project manager for Blackwood Industries' new community development initiative. We're building affordable housing, community centers, educational facilities. The position comes with a substantial salary increase, comprehensive health benefits, and most importantly, it demonstrates to the court that you have stable long-term employment with growth potential. Marcus stared at the document, then at Virginia. You're offering me a job, just like that? I'm offering you a job because you're qualified for it. I had my team research your background, Marcus. You've been working construction for 15 years. You have experience in project management, and everyone I spoke to described you as reliable and skilled. Virginia leaned back in her chair. But yes, the timing is strategic. Judges look favorably on parents who show they can provide advantages for their children. And what happens if the court says no? Do I still have this job, or does it disappear along with my chances of getting Emma back? Virginia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. The job is real, regardless of the outcome, Marcus. I meant what I said about paying forward the debt. You saved my life. I don't make that kind of gesture contingent on legal proceedings. Marcus read through the offer again, noting the salary figure that was nearly double what he made in construction. It felt too good to be true, like winning a lottery he'd never entered. Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just about the flood rescue. Rich people like you don't upend their lives for strangers. Virginia was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the table. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard it before. Do you know what I was doing in Millbrook the day of the flood? Marcus shook his head. I was driving up to visit Riverside Elementary School. They have a program there, an art and therapy initiative for kids dealing with trauma. My company funds it. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. My daughter loved art. She was always drawing, painting, creating something. When she got sick, art was how she processed everything happening to her. Virginia reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small sketchbook, worn at the edges. She opened it to reveal children's drawings, bright and hopeful despite the circumstances that had created them. This program has helped dozens of kids work through their pain. It's one of the few things I've funded that feels like it might actually make a difference. What does this have to do with Emma and me? Emma is enrolled in a similar program at Sunshine Valley. Her counselor says she spends hours drawing. Virginia turned the sketchbook toward Marcus. These are some of her pieces. Marcus felt his breath catch. The drawings were unmistakably Emma's work. Her style evolved, but still recognizable. There were landscapes filled with tiny details, portraits of other children at the group home, and scattered throughout, sketches of a man who looked like Marcus, but older, sadder. She draws you, Virginia said softly. Over and over. Different versions, different ages, but always you. Marcus traced one of the drawings with his finger, a portrait labeled "Daddy when I was 7." In it, he was smiling, wearing the blue work shirt Emma had picked out for his birthday that year. The accuracy of her memory astounded him. "I told you my daughter died of leukemia," Virginia continued. "What I didn't tell you is that she died believing I'd abandoned her for my work. I was trying to save the company after my father's death, working 18-hour days, missing doctor's appointments, treatments. I thought I was providing for her future, but all she knew was that Mommy wasn't there when she needed her most." The pain in Virginia's voice was raw, unguarded in a way that caught Marcus off guard. This was a woman who'd spent years building walls around her grief, and for reasons he didn't fully understand, she was allowing him to see behind them. "I can't bring Sarah back," Virginia said, her daughter's name barely above a whisper. "But maybe I can help you not make the same mistakes I did. Maybe I can help Emma get back to someone who will prioritize her above everything else." Marcus closed the sketchbook gently, understanding finally clicking into place. This wasn't charity or pity or even simple gratitude. This was a second chance disguised as a business transaction, healing dressed up as legal maneuvering. "The job offer doesn't make me uncomfortable," Marcus said after a moment. "What makes me uncomfortable is the feeling that you're trying to buy me a daughter." Virginia's eyes flashed, and for a second, Marcus saw the steel that had built her. "Empire, I'm not trying to buy anything, Marcus. I'm trying to level a playing field that's been tilted against people like you your entire life. Do you know what Emma's chances are of being successfully placed with a working-class single father with no lawyer and no connections? Do you want to find out?" The challenge hung between them, sharp as broken glass. Marcus knew she was right. Family court wasn't democratic. It favored stability, wealth, the appearance of conventional family structures. A single construction worker going up against the system alone had about as much chance as a butterfly in a hurricane. "Okay," he said finally. "I accept the job offer, but I need to know something first. When this is over, when Emma is home and settled, are you going to disappear? Because she's been abandoned by enough adults for one lifetime." Virginia considered the question seriously. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've spent 10 years avoiding personal connections, building walls between myself and anything that might hurt the way losing Sarah hurt. But I can promise you this. If I'm part of Emma's life, it will be because both of you want me there, not because I bought my way in." Marcus nodded, accepting the honesty if not the certainty. "One more thing. Tomorrow in court I speak for myself. I appreciate everything you've done, all the legal help and the opportunities, but when it comes to telling the judge why I should have my daughter back, those words need to come from me." "Agreed." Virginia stood, gathering her papers with the efficiency of someone always conscious of time. "The hearing is at 10 a.m. I'll pick you up at 9. We'll go over final preparations in the car." After she left, Marcus sat alone in his kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of how much his life had changed in less than a week. The job offer lay on the table like a winning lottery ticket, the sketchbook of Emma's art like a love letter, written in pencil and hope. He opened the sketchbook again, studying each drawing Emma had created. There were pictures of birds, flowers, the other kids at the group home. But scattered throughout were those portraits of him, labeled with memories he'd forgotten he'd shared with her. Daddy teaching me to ride my bike. Daddy making pancakes on Saturday. Daddy reading me stories. Marcus had spent 3 years believing he'd failed as a father, that his inability to fight hard enough had cost him his daughter. But looking at these drawings, he saw a different truth. Emma hadn't forgotten him. Despite everything the Hoffmans had told her, despite the months in foster care and group homes, she'd held on to memories of their time together. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he wanted. His sister Rosa had been telling him for years to fight for Emma, offering support he'd been too proud or too afraid to accept. "Rosa? Yeah, it's Marcus. Listen, I need to tell you something. Tomorrow I'm going to court to get Emma back." He paused, listening to his sister's excited exclamations. "No, I'll explain everything later. Right now, I just need you to do me a favor. Can you drive up tomorrow? I might need family there in case." His voice broke slightly on the last words, the weight of tomorrow's possibility hitting him fully for the first time. In less than 24 hours, he would either be reunited with his daughter or have his hopes crushed definitively. There would be no more what-ifs, no more maybes, just reality in whatever form it took. After hanging up with Rosa, Marcus stood in his living room and really looked at it for the first time in years. The couch Emma used to curl up on for movie nights. The bookshelf still holding her favorite stories. The area by the window where her art table had been before he'd put it away, unable to bear the reminder of her absence. If the judge said yes, if Emma came home, none of this would be the same. She was older now, changed by experiences he couldn't fully understand. The relationship they'd had when she was 8 might not be possible to recreate. But maybe Marcus, he thought as he pulled Emma's art supplies out of the closet for the first time in 3 years, they could build something new together. That night, Marcus dreamed of floods and courtrooms and little girls who drew pictures of fathers they missed. He woke before dawn, his heart racing with anticipation and terror in equal measure. In a few hours, he would see Emma again. In a few hours, he would know if Virginia's promises and legal maneuvering had been enough to bring his daughter home. He dressed carefully in the one suit he owned, bought years ago for Emma's mother's funeral and worn only twice since. In the mirror, he saw a man who looked older than his 32 years, lined by loss and manual labor and sleepless nights. But he also saw determination, the set of his jaw that Emma had inherited, the stubborn refusal to give up that had gotten him through the darkest periods of his life. At exactly 9 a.m., Virginia's car pulled up outside his house. Not the Rolls-Royce he might have expected, but a modest black sedan that wouldn't make him feel out of place at the courthouse. As Marcus walked toward the car, he carried with him Emma's sketchbook, filled with drawings that proved love could survive separation, and a father's hope that sometimes the system actually worked for people like him. The drive to the courthouse was quiet, both passengers lost in their own thoughts, but as they pulled into the parking lot, Virginia turned to him one last time. "Marcus, whatever happens in there, you need to know that you've already proven yourself as a father. Emma's drawings show a man who loved her completely. That kind of love doesn't disappear just because lawyers and judges say it should." Marcus nodded, gripping the sketchbook tighter. "Let's go bring my daughter home." The Cumberland County Family Court building stood like a monument to bureaucratic authority, its red brick facade weathered by decades of decisions that shaped and shattered families. Marcus walked through the metal detectors with Virginia beside him, the sketchbook tucked under his arm, like a shield. The marble floors echoed with the footsteps of lawyers, social workers, and families whose lives hung in the balance of judicial pronouncements. Marcus had expected to feel smaller in this environment, intimidated by the formal proceedings and legal jargon that would decide his future with Emma. Instead, he felt a strange calm settle over him. This was the day he'd been working toward for 3 years, the culmination of every sleepless night, wondering if he'd ever see his daughter again. Virginia guided him to a wooden bench outside courtroom 3B, where they would wait for their case to be called. She'd changed into a navy blue suit that spoke of understated power, her hair pinned up in a way that added gravity to her already serious demeanor. Beside her sat Margaret Chen, the family law attorney Virginia's firm had retained specifically for this case. Chen was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe early 30s, but her reputation preceded her. Virginia had described her as relentless, someone who studied every case as if it were a chess match where children's futures hung in the balance. "They'll call Emma's case first," Chen explained, her voice quiet but crisp. "She'll meet with the judge privately, what's called an in-chambers interview. Judge Reynolds likes to hear directly from older children about their preferences and concerns." Marcus nodded, though his hands trembled slightly as he gripped Emma's sketchbook. Somewhere in this building, his daughter was probably sitting on a similar bench, nervous about meeting a father she'd been told didn't want her. The social worker assigned to Emma's case, a woman named Diana Walsh, had arrived at the courthouse an hour earlier. Marcus had caught a glimpse of her in the hallway, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who carried herself with the weary compassion of someone who'd seen too many broken families. The doors to courtroom 3B opened, and Diana Walsh emerged, followed by a girl who made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Emma had grown tall in the 3 years since he'd last seen her, her dark hair now reaching past her shoulders. She wore jeans and a purple sweater that was slightly too big for her frame, and she moved with the careful posture of someone who'd learned not to take up too much space. But it was her eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They were still Emma's eyes, the same deep brown that had sparkled with mischief when she was 8. Now they held wariness, the kind of careful assessment children learned when adults repeatedly proved unreliable. She scanned the hallway, and when her gaze fell on Marcus, she stopped walking entirely. For a moment, father and daughter stared at each other across 20 feet of courthouse corridor, 3 years of separation, and all the pain that lived in the space between them. Marcus wanted to run to her, to sweep her up in his arms, the way he had when she was small, but something in her posture held him back. She looked ready to bolt, like a deer that might flee at any sudden movement. "Emma?" Diana Walsh had noticed the girl's frozen state and followed her gaze to Marcus. "Would you like me to introduce you?" Emma didn't answer immediately. Her hands, Marcus noticed, were clutched around a worn notebook, similar to the sketchbook he held. She seemed to be studying him, comparing the man before her with whatever image she'd carried in her memory. "You look older," she said finally, her voice softer than Marcus remembered, but unmistakably his daughter's. "So do you." Marcus stood slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. "You look exactly like your mom when she was your age." Something flickered across Emma's face at the mention of her mother. "Ms. Walsh says you want custody of me." "Emma, I've wanted you back every single day since you left. I never stopped wanting you home." Diana Walsh glanced between them, then at Virginia, and the legal team assembled behind Marcus. "Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private. There's a family conference room down the hall." The conference room was small and sterile, dominated by a round table surrounded by plastic chairs. Emma sat across from Marcus, the notebook still clutched in her hands. Diana Walsh positioned herself between them, clearly prepared to intervene if the conversation became too intense. Virginia and Margaret Chen flanked Marcus, while another social worker Marcus hadn't met sat beside Emma. "Emma," Diana began gently, "your father has asked the court to restore his custody rights. Before Judge Reynolds makes any decisions, she wants to make sure you understand what that means." Emma's eyes darted to Marcus, then back to her notebook. "It means I'd leave Sunshine Valley and go live with him." "Yes," Marcus said, leaning forward slightly. "It means you'd come home." "What home?" Emma's voice carried an edge that cut through Marcus like glass. "The Hoffmans said you sold our house. They said you moved away and didn't want me to know where." Marcus felt anger surge through him, white-hot and directed at people who'd spent years poisoning his daughter's mind against him, but he forced his voice to remain calm. "I never sold the house. I've been living in the same place we lived when your mom was sick. Your room is exactly like you left it." Emma's grip on her notebook tightened. They showed me papers, legal papers that said you gave up your rights to me. Those papers were forged, Margaret Chen interjected, pulling documents from her briefcase. Emma, your father never relinquished custody. The Hoffmans lied to the court and to you. They've since been arrested for fraud and several other charges. The young social worker beside Emma, who'd introduced herself as Kelly Martinez, leaned forward. Emma, I know this is a lot to process. You've been told one story for a long time, and now you're learning it wasn't true. That's confusing and probably scary. Emma nodded, her eyes filling with tears she seemed determined not to shed. Then why didn't he visit me? Why didn't he call or write letters? Marcus felt the question like a physical blow. This was the guilt he'd carried for 3 years, the decision to respect what he'd thought were legal boundaries rather than fight a system he couldn't afford to challenge. Because I thought that's what was best for you. The Hoffmans had legal custody, and their lawyers told me that any contact from me would be harmful to your emotional well-being. I believed them. But I wrote you letters, Emma whispered. So many letters. I gave them to the Hoffmans to mail to you. They said you never wrote back because you were starting a new family and didn't want reminders of the old one. The lie was so cruel, so calculated to drive a wedge between them, that Marcus had to take several deep breaths before he could respond. Emma, I never received any letters from you. If I had, nothing in the world could have stopped me from writing back. I saved every penny thinking that someday I might get a chance to have you back in my life. Emma studied his face as if searching for signs of deception. You really didn't know where I was. These past 8 months, you didn't know I wasn't with them anymore. I had no idea. The Hoffmans made me believe you were safe and happy with them. When I found out the truth, when Virginia told me you were in foster care. Marcus's voice broke slightly. It destroyed me. The thought that you were alone and I didn't know, that I wasn't there when you needed me. For the first time since entering the room, Emma looked directly at Marcus and held his gaze. I drew pictures of you, she said quietly. When things got bad, when I missed Mom, I'd draw pictures of you teaching me stuff or playing with me. It helped. Marcus felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Virginia showed me some of your art. You've gotten so much better. Your mom would be so proud. I drew her too, Emma said, opening her notebook for the first time. The pages Marcus could see were filled with sketches, some detailed, others quick impressions. I was afraid I'd forget what she looked like. You won't forget, Marcus promised. And I have photo albums at home, videos from when you were little. All the memories are still there, waiting for you. Diana Walsh consulted her watch and cleared her throat gently. I'm afraid we need to wrap up soon. Judge Reynolds will want to speak with Emma privately before making her decision. Marcus nodded, but he couldn't stop looking at his daughter. 3 years had changed her in ways both obvious and subtle. She was taller, more guarded, her movements careful and considered. But she was still Emma, still the girl who'd once insisted on wearing her favorite purple dress to the grocery store because it made her feel like a princess. Emma, he said, pulling her sketchbook from under his arm, Virginia gave me this, your drawings from Sunshine Valley. I wanted you to know that I've been looking at them every day since. Emma's eyes widened as she recognized the sketchbook. Ms. Walsh said I had to leave that behind when I came to court. I brought it because I wanted you to see something. Marcus opened the book to a page he'd studied countless times, a drawing of him building a treehouse with a stick figure, Emma watching. You drew this from memory. You remembered that summer when we tried to build you a treehouse and it came out looking like a lopsided box. A ghost of a smile crossed Emma's face. You said it had character. It did. Just Like your mum's cooking had character when she burned dinner. Marcus closed the book and slid it across the table to her. I kept it because it reminded me that you remembered the good times too, not just the sad ones. Emma took the sketchbook, and for a moment her composure cracked. I was so mad at you for so long. But I missed you too. I missed having a dad. You never stopped having a dad, Emma. I might not have been where you could see me, but I never stopped being your father. Diana Walsh stood, indicating the meeting was over. Emma, Judge Reynolds is ready to speak with you now. This is your chance to tell her what you want, what feels right to you. As they prepared to leave the conference room, Emma lingered beside Marcus. If the judge says yes, if I can come live with you again, what happens next? Marcus looked down at his daughter, this brave girl who'd survived so much and made a promise he intended to keep. Then we figure it out together, one day at a time. No more lawyers, no more strangers making decisions about our family. Just us, rebuilding what we lost. Emma nodded solemnly, then did something that caught Marcus completely off guard. She stood on her tiptoes and hugged him, quick and fierce, before stepping back with tears in her eyes. I hope she says yes, Emma whispered. I'm tired of not having a real home. Udi, as Diana Walsh led Emma toward Judge Reynolds' chambers, Marcus watched his daughter walk away with a mixture of pride and terror. In Emma's hands, she carried both sketchbooks now, her own, and the one filled with memories of their life together. The weight of their conversation settled on Marcus's shoulders. In minutes, a judge would decide whether his 3-year nightmare would end or continue indefinitely. Virginia moved to stand beside him in the hallway. How do you feel it went? Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. She believes me, I think. But she's scared. She's been hurt so many times by people who were supposed to protect her. That's not your fault, Marcus, isn't it? Marcus turned to look at Virginia, his voice raw with emotion. I let them take her. I followed the lawyer's advice, respected the system, trusted that people in authority knew what was best. I should have fought harder. Margaret Chen joined them, her expression serious. Marcus, I need to prepare you for what's coming. Judge Reynolds is thorough. She'll ask Emma about her preferences, her fears, her understanding of the situation, but she'll also consider the report from Emma's therapist, the social worker's recommendations, and the testimony from character witnesses. Character witnesses? Your sister Rosa arrived about an hour ago. She's prepared to testify about your character, your relationship with Emma before the custody change, and your stability as a parent. We also have statements from your co-workers, your landlord, and several neighbors. Marcus was touched by the support, though nervous about what these people might say under oath. His life for the past 3 years had been quiet, focused solely on work and surviving each day without Emma. He hadn't realized how many people had been watching, noting his dedication to the hope of getting his daughter back. The doors to Judge Reynolds' chambers remained closed for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Marcus paced the hallway, unable to sit still. He thought about Emma on the other side of those doors, answering questions about where she wanted to live, who she wanted to be her guardian. A 12-year-old girl shouldn't have to make such decisions, but the family court system often placed impossible responsibilities on children. When the doors finally opened, Emma emerged first, followed by Judge Reynolds' clerk. Emma's face was streaked with tears, but she looked more determined than defeated. She walked straight to Marcus, ignoring the social workers and lawyers assembled in the hallway. She asked me a lot of questions, Emma said quietly, about what I remember from before, what I want now, if I understand what it means to live with you again. What did you tell her? Emma looked up at him with eyes that seemed older than her 12 years. I told her that I've been scared for a long time, scared that nobody really wanted me, that I didn't have a real family anymore, but I also told her that I remember feeling safe with you. I remember you taking care of me when Mom was sick, how you'd sing to me when I had nightmares. Marcus knelt down to Emma's eye level. You told her the truth. I told her I want to come home, Emma continued, her voice stronger now. I told her I'm tired of being Emma Rodriguez who lives in foster care. I want to be Emma Rodriguez who has a dad again. The clerk approached them with a formal expression. Judge Reynolds will see all parties in the courtroom now for her decision. As they filed into the courtroom, Marcus felt the weight of the moment settling around them. The next few minutes would determine not just where Emma lived, but whether she would have the chance to rebuild the father-daughter relationship that had been stolen from them. Judge Reynolds was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She took her seat at the bench and surveyed the assembled group before her. Marcus held his breath, Emma's small hand finding his as they sat in the front row. I have reviewed all the evidence presented in this case, Judge Reynolds began, her voice carrying the authority of her position. I have spoken extensively with Emma about her wishes and concerns. I have considered the reports from social services, the character references, and the circumstances that led to this situation. Marcus felt Emma's grip tighten on his hand. Across the aisle, he could see Virginia sitting rigidly, her own tension evident despite her usual composed demeanor. The court finds that Marcus Rodriguez's parental rights were terminated under false pretenses based on fraudulent documentation provided by the previous guardians. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Rodriguez has maintained stable employment, housing, and has demonstrated unwavering commitment to regaining custody of his daughter. Judge Reynolds paused, looking directly at Emma. More importantly, Emma herself has expressed clearly and consistently her desire to return to her father's care. At her age, and given her maturity in handling this difficult situation, this court gives significant weight to her preferences. Marcus felt his heart pounding so hard, he was sure everyone in the courtroom could hear it. Therefore, Judge Reynolds continued, this court hereby restores full custody of Emma Rodriguez to her biological father, Marcus Rodriguez, effective immediately. The Social Services Department will work with Mr. Rodriguez to facilitate a smooth transition and provide support services as needed. The gavel came down with a sound that seemed to echo through Marcus's entire being. They'd won. Emma was coming home. He turned to look at his daughter, who was staring at him with wonder and disbelief, as if she couldn't quite believe their years of separation were finally over. We did it, Emma whispered, and then she was in his arms, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. 3 years of grief, hope, and desperate love poured out in that embrace as father and daughter held each other in a courthouse that had seen too many families torn apart, but today had helped put one back together. Over Emma's shoulder, Marcus caught Virginia's eye. She was smiling through her own tears, and in that moment, he saw not the powerful CEO who'd manipulated systems and called in favors, but a woman who understood exactly what this reunion meant. What it felt like to hold your child and know they were finally safe. The paperwork that followed was a blur of signatures and instructions from social workers about transition plans and support services. But Marcus was only half listening. Emma sat beside him, sketching in her notebook, occasionally looking up at him as if to confirm he was really there. That this wasn't another dream that would dissolve when she woke up in the group home. As they prepared to leave the courthouse, Diana Walsh approached them with a file folder. Emma, these are yours, she said, handing her the folder. Your personal belongings from Sunshine Valley, some schoolwork, and letters that were found in your case file. Emma opened the folder curiously, then gasped. Inside were dozens of envelopes, yellowed with age and postmarked from 3 years. Ego. Her name was written in her own childish handwriting, but the addresses were all to Marcus at his house on Elm Street. "The letters you wrote to your father," Diana explained gently. "They were never mailed. The Hoffmans kept them all." Emma pulled out one of the letters, her hands shaking slightly as she recognized her own 8-year-old penmanship. "Dear Daddy, I miss you so much. The Hoffmans say you don't want me anymore, but I don't believe them. I know you love me. When can I come home?" Marcus felt fresh tears threaten as Emma showed him letter after letter she'd written, pages of a little girl's hope and love preserved in envelopes that had never seen the inside of a mailbox. All those years of believing he'd betrayed his promise to always be there for her. And she'd been writing to him, maintaining faith even in the face of lies designed to break it. "We'll read them all together," Marcus promised, gathering the letters carefully. Every single one. As they finally left the courthouse, Emma walking between Marcus and Virginia, the afternoon sun seemed brighter than it had in years. They had details to work out, adjustments to make, and years of separation to bridge. But they were together, now legally and irrevocably, a family restored by the simple power of a child's honesty and a father's refusal to give up hope. Emma paused on the courthouse steps and looked back at the building where her life had just changed. It's really over, isn't it? All the moving around, all the people deciding where I go. Marcus put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. It's really over. From now on, where you go is where we decide together. You're coming home, Emma. You're finally coming home. The house on Elm Street looked smaller than Emma remembered, though she couldn't tell if that was because she'd grown or because memory had a way of stretching things beyond their actual size. Marcus carried her single duffel bag up the front steps while she stood on the sidewalk, taking in the place that had once been home. The maple tree in the front yard had grown taller, its branches now reaching the second-story windows. The porch, swing where she used to read on summer afternoons, still hung in the same spot, though the paint was newer. "It looks the same," Emma said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of wonder and apprehension. "I couldn't change anything," Marcus admitted, setting down her bag to unlock the front door. "Every time I thought about painting or rearranging, it felt like I'd be erasing pieces of you and your mom." Emma followed him inside, and the familiar smell hit her immediately. It was the scent of home, unchanged after 3 years. Wood polish, the faint aroma of coffee that seemed permanently embedded in the walls, and something else she couldn't name but recognized as uniquely theirs. The living room was exactly as she remembered, down to the throw pillows her mother had crocheted arranged precisely on the couch. "Your room," Marcus said, gesturing toward the stairs, his voice uncertain. "I mean, if you want to see it. I know it might feel strange, like stepping back in time." Emma nodded and climbed the familiar stairs, her hand trailing along the banister. At the top, she paused outside her bedroom door, the door that still bore the wooden letters spelling out her name that Marcus had made in his workshop when she was 6. She pushed it open slowly. The room was frozen in time, a museum of her 8-year-old self, the twin bed with its purple comforter and collection of stuffed animals, the bookshelf lined with picture books and early chapter novels, her art table by the window still set up with crayons and colored pencils, even her clothes from 3 years ago hung in the closet, too small for her now, but carefully preserved. Emma walked to the art table and picked up one of the crayons, rolling it between her fingers. "You kept everything." "I kept everything," Marcus confirmed from the doorway. "I know it's not right for who you are now. We can change whatever you want, get new things, make it yours again." Emma sat on the edge of the bed, testing its familiarity. The mattress felt the same beneath her, and when she lay back, she found herself staring at the ceiling, where glow-in-the-dark stars still formed the constellation her mother had helped her create. In the group home, she'd shared a room with 3 other girls, sleeping on a narrow cot with institutional sheets. Privacy had been a luxury she'd forgotten existed. "It's weird," Emma said finally. "Being here, everything's the same, but I'm different." Marcus entered the room and sat on the chair at her art table, keeping a respectful distance. "Different how?" Emma considered the question, absently straightening one of the stuffed animals. "I don't know if I remember how to be your daughter anymore. At Sunshine Valley, I had to be careful all the time. Don't take up too much space, don't ask for too much, don't get too attached because you might have to leave. You don't have to be careful here," Marcus said gently. "This is your home. You can take up as much space as you want, ask for whatever you need. What if I don't remember how?" Emma's voice was small, vulnerable in a way that broke Marcus's heart. "What if I'm too broken now?" Marcus moved to sit on the edge of the bed, close enough to reach out if she wanted, but not crowding her. "Emma, you're not broken. You're hurt, and that's different. Hurt, things can heal." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the comforter. "I had dreams about coming home, but in the dreams, everything went back to exactly how it was before Mom got sick. I knew that was impossible, but I hoped anyway." "We can't go back," Marcus agreed. "Your mom isn't here. We've both changed. We've lost time. We can't get back. But maybe we can build something new, something that honors what we had before, but works for who we are now." Emma looked around the room again, and Marcus could see her processing the reality of being home. "I want to keep some things," she said. "The stars on the ceiling, some of the books. But I think I need new clothes, maybe different colors for the walls, and definitely a bigger bed." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt since walking into the house. "We can do all of that. We'll go shopping this weekend, pick out whatever you like." "Together?" Emma asked, and there was something tentative in the question that suggested she wasn't sure she could count on his presence. "Together," Marcus confirmed. "Emma, I'm not going anywhere. I know it might take time for you to believe that, given everything that's happened, but I need you to know that I will never voluntarily leave you again." Emma nodded, though Marcus could see she was still holding something back. "Can I ask you something about the time when I was with the Hoffmans? Anything. Did you date anyone? The Hoffmans said you had a new girlfriend who didn't want kids around." Marcus felt anger flash through him at yet another lie the Hoffmans had fed his daughter. "No, Emma, I haven't dated anyone since your mom died. I wasn't interested in starting over with someone new when I still had a daughter I was hoping to get back." "Really?" Emma's relief was palpable. "I was scared I'd come home and find out I had a stepmother who didn't want me here." "The only person I want in this house is you," Marcus assured her. "Though Virginia has been helping us a lot. You remember her, right? From the courthouse?" Emma nodded. "She seems nice, kind of sad, though." Marcus was struck by his daughter's perceptiveness. "She is sad. She lost her own daughter a few years ago. I think helping reunite us gives her some peace." "Is she going to keep visiting?" "I don't know. Would you want her to?" Emma considered this. "Maybe. It might be nice to have someone around who understands about missing people." That evening, Marcus made dinner while Emma explored the house, reacquainting herself with spaces that had lived in her memory for 3 years. She found the videos Marcus had mentioned, recordings of birthday parties and Christmas mornings, family vacations, and ordinary moments that had become precious in their absence. They ate dinner at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared countless meals as a family of 3. The silence felt heavy at first, both of them trying to navigate the strange territory of being together again. Finally, Emma broke the quiet. "I need to tell you something," she said, pushing peas around on her plate. "I'm not the same kid who lived here before. I know things now, bad things about how families can be. Sometimes I have nightmares, and sometimes I get angry for no reason." Marcus set down his fork. "Do you want to talk about what happened with the Hoffmans, about the other foster homes?" Emma shook her head. "Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. I just want you to know that I might not be easy to live with." "Emma, being a parent isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it. You've been through things no kid should go through, and if that changes how you react to the world, that's understandable. We'll figure it out together." After dinner, they sat on the couch and looked through the letters Emma had written, but never sent. Each one was a window into her thoughts during the separation, chronicling her confusion, anger, hope, and unwavering belief that Marcus still loved her despite what she was being told. "This one," Emma said, pulling out a letter written on lined notebook paper. "I wrote this on my 10th birthday. The Hoffmans threw me a party, but it felt fake. I kept thinking about how you and Mom always made my birthdays special." Marcus read the letter, written in Emma's careful 10-year-old handwriting. "Dear Daddy, today I turned 10 and made a wish that you'd come get me. I know you can't because the Hoffmans say the court won't let you, but I wished anyway. I miss our pancake breakfasts on my birthday. I miss how you'd let me help you make them, even though I always spilled batter everywhere. I hope wherever you are, you remembered it was my birthday. I hope you made pancakes and thought about me. Love, Emma." Marcus had to stop reading, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I did remember I made pancakes that morning and ate them, alone, thinking about you the whole time." Emma leaned against his shoulder, a gesture that felt both familiar and new. "I knew you would. Even when everyone told me you'd forgotten about me, I knew you hadn't." They spent the next hour reading through more letters, piecing together Emma's experience during their separation. There were letters full of anger at Marcus for not fighting harder, letters where she defended him against the Hoffmans' criticisms, letters where she detailed small victories at school and wished she could share them with him. "I want to frame some of these," Marcus said. "Not all of them, but maybe a few. Reminders of how strong you were, how you never gave up on us." "What about you?" Emma asked. "Did you write letters to me?" Marcus got up and went to his bedroom, returning with a shoebox that had been sitting on his dresser. "I wrote you letters too. Every week for 3 years. I couldn't send them, but I wrote them anyway." Emma's eyes widened as she saw the box full of envelopes addressed to her in Marcus's handwriting. "Can I read them?" "They're yours," Marcus said. "All of them." As Emma carefully opened the first letter, Marcus watched her face change. These letters chronicled his own journey through grief, hope, and determination. They talked about work, about changes in the neighborhood, about holidays spent alone but with thoughts of her. They were love letters from a father to his daughter, promises of a future reunion that had seemed increasingly unlikely but never impossible. "You never stopped believing I'd come home," Emma said, looking up from a letter Marcus had written the previous Christmas. "Never," Marcus confirmed. "Even when it seemed hopeless, I kept believing." Emma closed the letter carefully and looked around the living room, taking in the framed photos of their family, the unchanged decor, the evidence of a life paused rather than abandoned. "I think I'm starting to believe it too, that I'm really home, I mean." "It's going to take time," Marcus acknowledged, "for both of us. We've both changed. We have new routines to establish, new ways of being father and daughter. But we have time now, all the time we need." Emma nodded, then yawned. The emotional weight of the day was catching up with her. "I think I want to go to bed, in my own room, in my own bed." "Of course. Do you? Would you like me to tuck you in? I know you're probably too old for that now." Emma smiled, the first truly carefree smile Marcus had seen from her. "I'm not too old. I missed being tucked in." Upstairs, Emma changed into the new pajamas Virginia had bought for her, since all her old clothes were too small. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed as she settled under the covers, surrounded by the stuffed animals that had waited 3 years for her return. "Daddy," Emma said, using the name she hadn't spoken aloud in years. "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow? We wake up together in our house. We have breakfast together. We start figuring out our new normal. Nothing dramatic, just being a family again." Emma nodded, then reached for his hand. "I love you. I never stopped loving you, even when I was angry about everything that happened." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "I love you too, Emma. More than I could ever explain. Sweet dreams, sweetheart." As Marcus turned off the light, Emma watched the stars on her ceiling begin to glow. They were the same stars she'd fallen asleep under as a little girl, but now they felt different somehow. Before, they'd been magic and wonder. Now they were continuity, proof that some things endured even when everything else fell apart. Marcus stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter's breathing even out as she drifted towards sleep. 3 years ago, this had been a nightly ritual so common he'd taken it for granted. Tonight, it felt like a miracle. In the morning, Marcus woke to unfamiliar sounds in the house. For a moment, panic gripped him as he thought something was wrong. Then he realized what he was hearing. The shower running, footsteps in the hallway, the sounds of someone else living in the house. Emma was awake. Emma was home. He found her in the kitchen, standing in front of the open refrigerator in her pajamas, her hair still damp from the shower. "There's no food in here," she announced without turning around. Marcus laughed, a sound that felt rusty from disuse. "I wasn't exactly cooking for two. We'll need to go grocery shopping." "Can we get Lucky Charms?" Emma asked hopefully. "The Hoffmans only let me have healthy cereal, and at Sunshine Valley, everything came from giant institutional boxes." "We can get Lucky Charms," Marcus agreed. "And anything else you want. We'll make a list." Emma turned to face him, and Marcus was struck again by how much she'd grown. She was almost as tall as her mother had been, with the same graceful way of moving. But her eyes held experiences that a 12-year-old shouldn't have, a gravity that came from being forced to grow up too quickly. "I've been thinking," Emma said, "about what you said yesterday about building something new. I want to help. With the house, with figuring out how we live together. I don't want to just be told what to do anymore. I want to help make the decisions." Marcus nodded, understanding the importance of what she was saying. At Sunshine Valley, Emma's life had been completely controlled by others. Giving her agency in rebuilding their life together was crucial to her healing and their relationship. "I think that's a great idea," he said. "We're partners in this, Emma. Equal partners." Emma smiled, and Marcus saw a glimpse of the confident, a child she'd been before everything went wrong. "Good, because I have a lot of ideas about how we can make this place feel like home again." As they sat down to make grocery lists and plans for redecorating Emma's room, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years: contentment. Not happiness exactly, that would take time to rebuild, but a deep sense of rightness, of pieces falling back into place. Outside, the morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating the space where Marcus and Emma would rebuild their relationship, one conversation, one shared meal, one ordinary moment at a time. They had work to do, healing to accomplish, and a future to create together, but they had something they'd been denied for too long. They had each other, and they had time. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be difficult conversations about the past, challenges in adapting to each other's changes, and the ongoing work of rebuilding trust that had been damaged by circumstances beyond their control. But sitting at their kitchen table, making plans for their future, Marcus and Emma both understood that they were exactly where they belonged. They were home. 6 months after the courthouse reunion, the house on Elm Street had transformed into something new while honoring what had come before. Emma's room now sported sage green walls, chosen after 3 trips to the paint store and countless samples taped to every surface. Her bed was bigger, her bookshelf filled with young adult novels and art books, but the glow-in-the-dark stars still sparkled overhead. The art table by the window had been replaced with a proper drafting desk, where Emma spent hours working on increasingly sophisticated drawings and paintings. Marcus stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, a routine that had evolved over the months into something comfortable and shared. Emma usually helped, but tonight she was in the living room with Virginia, who had become a regular visitor and, unexpectedly, a cherished friend to both of them. Their relationship had grown organically, without the forced quality Marcus had once feared. Virginia wasn't trying to replace anyone or insert herself inappropriately into their family. She was simply present when needed, absent when space was required, and generous with both resources and genuine care. The community center, a project is moving faster than anticipated, Virginia was saying as Marcus carried plates into the dining room. We'll be ready for the grand opening by fall. The community center was one of several projects Virginia's foundation had undertaken in Millbrook. What had started as a strategic business decision to establish a local presence had evolved into something more personal. Virginia had found purpose in investing in the same community that had sheltered her during one of her most vulnerable moments. Emma's been working on something for the art program there, Marcus said, glancing toward his daughter, who was carefully arranging her silverware with the precision she applied to everything these days. Haven't you, Em? Emma nodded, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. It's not finished yet. I want it to be perfect before anyone sees it. Art is never perfect, Virginia said gently. That's what makes it honest. This was the kind of wisdom Virginia often shared, earned through her own loss and recovery. Marcus had learned that beneath the successful CEO exterior lived a woman who understood pain intimately and had found ways to transform it into action. Emma had taken to Virginia immediately, perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit who knew what it meant to rebuild after devastating loss. As they settled into dinner, Marcus reflected on how naturally the 3 of them had formed a chosen family of sorts. It wasn't romantic between him and Virginia. They'd never crossed that line, perhaps because they both understood that what they'd built was too valuable to risk on the uncertainty of romance. They were friends who'd saved each other in different ways, and that bond felt more solid than passion might have been. I had a meeting with Emma's school counselor today, Marcus said, passing a bowl of roasted vegetables. She's recommending Emma for the advanced art program next year. Emma's face lit up. Really? Mrs. Patterson thinks I'm ready. She thinks you're more than ready. She said your portfolio shows remarkable depth for someone your age. Marcus paused, watching his daughter's expression. She also said you've made real friends this semester. This had been one of Marcus's biggest concerns during Emma's reintegration. Years in foster care and group homes had taught her to be wary of attachments, to keep people at a distance. But slowly, carefully, she'd begun to trust again. She joined the art club at school, started having lunch with a small group of kids who shared her interests, and had even been invited to a few birthday parties. Sophie asked if I want to sleep over this weekend, Emma said, mentioning her closest friend from art class. If that's okay. Of course it's okay, Marcus replied, though he felt the familiar flutter of anxiety that came with letting Emma venture further into the world. Do you want me to talk to her parents? Dad, I'm 13 now. Emma said with exaggerated exasperation. "I can handle the logistics of a sleepover." Marcus exchanged an amused glance with Virginia. In the past few months, Emma had grown more assertive, more willing to claim her space and voice her opinions. It was a welcome change from the careful, withdrawn girl who'd first come home, but it did require adjustments on Marcus's part. Learning to parent a teenager was different from the 8-year-old Emma he remembered. "Speaking of sleepovers," Virginia said, "I wanted to talk to both of you about something. My mother is coming to visit next month." This was significant. Virginia rarely spoke about her family, and Marcus had gotten the impression that relationships were strained. He knew Virginia's father had died when she was young, leaving her to run the family business. Her mother, from what little Virginia had shared, was a difficult woman who'd never approved of how Virginia had handled either business or personal matters. "She wants to meet you both," Virginia continued, her tone carefully neutral. "She's heard about our friendship and is, shall we say, curious." "Curious good or curious bad?" Emma asked with the directness only teenagers could manage. Virginia smiled. "With my mother, it's hard to tell the difference. But I think it's important. You meet her, you've both become such significant parts of my life, and despite our differences, family matters to me." Marcus understood the subtext. Virginia was claiming them as family to her mother, making a statement about where her priorities lay. It was both an honor and a responsibility he didn't take lightly. "We'd be happy to meet her," Marcus said. "Right, Em?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Will she tell embarrassing stories about you as a kid?" "Undoubtedly," Virginia laughed. "She lives for embarrassing stories. Fair warning, she'll probably ask you both entirely inappropriate questions about your lives and plans. She means, well, mostly, but subtlety isn't her strong suit." After dinner, while Emma worked on homework upstairs, Marcus and Virginia sat on the back porch with coffee. The yard had been transformed too, with raised garden beds that Emma had designed and helped build. She'd insisted on a butterfly garden, saying the monarchs reminded her of hope because they traveled so far to find home. "How are you really doing?" Virginia asked, a question that had become part of their regular check-ins. "With Emma, with everything changing so fast?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Some days are harder than others. She's still dealing with what happened to her, and I'm still learning how to be her father again. But we're getting there. She seems happier lately." "She is. The nightmares are less frequent, and she's starting to trust that I'm not going anywhere. But there are still moments when I see that look in her eyes, like she's waiting for the other shoe to drop." Virginia nodded knowingly. Trauma doesn't disappear overnight, but healing happens in increments, in small daily choices to stay open, instead of closing off. "Is that what you're doing, staying open?" Virginia was quiet for a moment, watching the butterflies Emma loved visit the garden. "I'm trying to. For 10 years after Sarah died, I closed myself off from anything that might hurt that much again. Building businesses, making money, accumulating power. It all felt safer than caring about people. And now? Now I have people I care about again. And yes, it's terrifying. But it's also the only thing that makes life feel worth living." Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand gently. "I'm glad that day you crashed your car in the flood brought you into our lives." "So am I," Virginia replied, "though I prefer to think of it as strategic aquaplaning." Their laughter was interrupted by Emma calling from the kitchen. "Dad, Virginia, come look at this." They found Emma at the kitchen table, with her laptop open, surrounded by art supplies and printouts. She'd been working on a secret project for weeks, disappearing into her room with supplies and emerging only for meals. "And required family time. Remember how you said the community center needed artwork for the main gallery when it opens?" Emma said, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. "I've been creating a series based on the theme of rebuilding." She turned the laptop toward them, revealing a digital portfolio of her work. The pieces were sophisticated beyond her years, each one exploring different aspects of loss, recovery, and transformation. There were paintings of houses being restored, gardens growing from concrete, people finding their way back to each other across vast distances. "Emma, these are incredible," Virginia breathed, scrolling through the images. "The composition, the color choices, the emotional depth, this is professional-level work." "They're about us," Emma explained, pointing to specific pieces. "This one's about Dad waiting for me to come home. See how the house has all these empty spaces, but there's still light in the windows. And this one's about you helping reunite families, the hands reaching across the breaks in the bridge." Marcus studied the paintings with wonder and something like awe. His daughter had processed their experience through art, transforming pain into beauty in a way that spoke to truths too complex for words. "And this one," Emma said, clicking to a final painting that she'd clearly just finished, "is about all of us, our new family." The painting showed three figures in a garden very much like their backyard, a man teaching a girl to plant vegetables, while a woman sat reading nearby, butterflies dancing around all of them. It wasn't photorealistic, but it captured something true about the life they'd built together. "And this is..." Marcus struggled for words. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I want to donate the whole series to the community center," Emma said. "But I want us to have copies for our house too. Is that okay?" "It's more than okay," Virginia said softly. "It's perfect. Emma, you've created something that will give hope to other families going through difficult times. This is exactly what art should do." Later that evening, after Virginia had gone home and Emma was in bed, Marcus sat in his workshop behind the house. He'd started spending time here again, making furniture and small crafts like he used to do before life became about survival rather than creation. Tonight he was working on a picture frame for one of Emma's paintings, but his mind kept returning to the image she'd created of their little family. Emma appeared in the doorway wearing her pajamas and slippers. "Can't sleep. Just thinking," Marcus said, setting down his sandpaper. "Want to come sit with me?" Emma perched on a stool beside his workbench, a gesture that reminded him of when she was small and would help him with his projects. "What are you thinking about?" "About how proud I am of you. Not just the art, though, that's amazing, but about how brave you've been, how you've let yourself care about people again despite everything that happened." Emma was quiet for a moment, picking up a small piece of wood and turning it over in her hands. "Can I tell you something I never told anyone?" "Always. When I was at Sunshine Valley, I used to pretend you were dead." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Em, not because I wanted you to be," she continued quickly, "but because it hurt less to think you were gone forever than to think you didn't want me anymore. If you were dead, it wasn't your choice to not come for me." Marcus put down his tools and pulled Emma into a hug. "I'm so sorry you had to carry that alone." "But here's the thing," Emma said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "When I found out the truth, when I learned you'd been trying to get me back the whole time, I had to figure out how to let myself hope again, and that was scarier than thinking you were dead." "Why was it scary?" "Because if I hoped and it didn't work out, I didn't think I could survive being disappointed again." Marcus held his daughter tighter, understanding once again how much courage it had taken for her to open her heart to the possibility of coming home. "But you did hope," he said. "You took that risk. Because Virginia showed me that sometimes adults can be trusted to do what they say they will, and because you never stopped trying, even when it seemed impossible." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, surrounded by the tools and materials Marcus used to build and repair things. It seemed fitting somehow, this conversation happening in a space dedicated to making things whole again. "Dad," Emma said eventually, "I love our new life. Our chosen family with Virginia, the way you let me have input on everything, the way we talk about things now instead of just me being told what to do. But I still miss Mom sometimes. I miss her too, Marcus admitted, every day. And that's okay, Em. Missing her doesn't mean we're not grateful for what we have now. I've been thinking about asking Virginia to officially be my godmother, or something, Emma said tentatively. Not to replace Mom, but to acknowledge that she's family now too. Marcus smiled. I think Virginia would be honored, and I think your mom would approve too. She always wanted you to have lots of people who loved you. The next morning brought the first real snow of the season, transforming Millbrook into a winter wonderland. Emma pressed her face to the kitchen window, watching the flakes fall with the same wonder she'd had as a small child. Snow day? She asked hopefully. Marcus checked his phone for school closures. Snow day! What do you want to do? Can we call Virginia? Maybe she wants to come over and watch movies with us. We could make hot chocolate and popcorn. I think that sounds perfect. As Marcus made the call, he reflected on how naturally Emma included Virginia in their plans now. It wasn't forced or artificial. It was simply how their lives had evolved. Virginia arrived an hour later with groceries for a proper snow day feast and an armload of movies. They spent the day in comfortable domesticity, building a fire in the fireplace that Marcus hadn't used in years, making elaborate hot chocolate with whipped cream and cinnamon, and watching old movies while snow continued to fall outside. Emma claimed the spot between Marcus and Virginia on the couch, her artwork spread on the coffee table as she added finishing touches to pieces for the community center. I have an announcement, Virginia said during a break between movies. The gallery at the community center will officially be named the Emma Rodriguez Gallery for Young Artists. Emma looked up from her sketching, eyes wide. What? Really? Really? You're the first artist to create a complete series for the space, and your work embodies everything we hope the center will represent. Healing, growth, community, hope. Emma looked between Marcus and Virginia, then burst into tears. For a moment, Marcus panicked, thinking something was wrong. Then he realized these were tears of joy, of being overwhelmed by recognition and belonging. Hey, he said softly, pulling her close. What is it, sweetheart? I just never thought, Emma managed between tears. I never thought my name would be on anything good. For 3 years, my name was on case files and problem lists. Now it's going to be on an art gallery. Virginia moved closer, wrapping both Marcus and Emma in an impromptu group hug. Your name is going to be on lots of good things, Emma Rodriguez. This is just the beginning. That evening, as they cleaned up from their snow day celebration, Emma made another announcement. I've decided something. I want to change my last name. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Had he misunderstood how well Emma had adjusted? Did she not want to be a Rodriguez anymore? To what? He asked carefully. Rodriguez Blackwood, Emma said. Hyphenated. Virginia is family now, and family should share names if they want to. Marcus looked at Virginia, who looked as surprised as he felt. That's a big decision. Are you sure? I'm sure. We're not a traditional family, but we're a real family, and I want that to be official. Virginia wiped tears from her eyes. Emma, I would be honored to share a name with you, but you don't have to make that choice for me. I'm not doing it for you, Emma replied, with the straightforward honesty that had become her trademark. I'm doing it for me, because you helped save our family, and now you're part of it. Marcus felt his own eyes fill with tears. In less than a year, they'd gone from broken and separated to whole and connected. Not just him and Emma, but all three of them, bound together by choice and love rather than obligation. Then, Rodriguez Blackwood. It is, he said. We'll start the paperwork tomorrow. 3 months later, on a warm spring day, the Rodriguez Blackwood family stood together for the grand opening of the Millbrook Community Center. Emma's gallery was packed with visitors admiring her work, while local news cameras captured interviews with the young artist who'd created such a powerful series about recovery and renewal. Marcus watched Emma confidently discuss her artistic process with a reporter, articulating thoughts about trauma and healing with wisdom beyond her years. Beside him, Virginia beamed with pride, occasionally redirecting questions to Emma when reporters tried to focus too much on her own foundation's role. "She's remarkable," said a voice behind them. Marcus turned to find Mrs. Chen, the family lawyer who'd helped with Emma's custody case, now handling the name change paperwork. "I've never seen a child bounce back from that kind of trauma so completely." "She didn't bounce back," Marcus corrected gently. "She grew forward. There's a difference." Mrs. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "You're right, and she's lucky to have people who understand that distinction." As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found quiet moments to observe the life they'd built. Emma laughed with friends from school who'd come to see her work. Virginia engaged in animated conversation with community leaders about future projects. Rosa and her family had driven up for the day, marveling at how well Emma had flourished. But it was the small moments that meant the most to Marcus. Virginia automatically straightening one of Emma's paintings that had been knocked slightly askew. Emma introducing Virginia to her friends as "my other mom." The three of them moving, in sync through the crowd, checking in with each other without words. The kind of fluid coordination that only came from genuine family bonds. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, they returned home and collapsed in the living room. Emma lay on the rug, working on her latest piece, while Marcus and Virginia sat on the couch, reviewing feedback from the gallery opening. "I can't believe how many people asked about commissioning work from me," Emma said, not looking up from her sketchpad. "Mrs. Patterson says I should start thinking about art school applications for high school." "It's not too early to start visiting some schools," Virginia agreed. "There are some excellent programs that accept students based on portfolio rather than traditional academic criteria. Would you come with me to visit schools?" Emma asked. "Both of you?" "Wild horses couldn't keep us away," Marcus replied. Emma grinned and returned to her artwork. Marcus watched her for a moment, then reached over to squeeze Virginia's hand. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sound of pencil on paper and the evening sounds of their neighborhood. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "For what?" Virginia asked. "For saving us, for staying, for becoming family." Virginia smiled. "Thank you for letting me, for showing me that second chances work both ways." As night fell over the house on Elm Street, the Rodriguez-Blackwood family settled into their evening routines. Emma finished her artwork and headed upstairs to bed, pausing to hug both Marcus and Virginia goodnight. Virginia gathered her things to head back to her apartment, a modest place she'd chosen specifically to be close to their neighborhood. Marcus walked her to the door, a ritual they'd developed over the months. "Same time tomorrow for Emma's soccer game?" "Wouldn't miss it," Virginia promised, "though I still think 13 is too young for such aggressive competition." Says the woman who once told me she broke someone's nose during a high school tennis match. That was different. That was tennis. Marcus laughed, still amazed by how light everything felt now. The crushing weight of loss that had defined his life for 3 years had lifted, replaced by the vibrant complexity of a family rebuilt and expanded. After Virginia left, Marcus climbed the stairs to check on Emma. He found her at her easel, working on something new by the light of her desk lamp. "Shouldn't you be getting ready for bed?" he asked. "Just finishing this," Emma said, adding delicate touches to what appeared to be a portrait. "I wanted to capture today while it was still fresh in my mind." Marcus moved closer to see the painting. It showed the three of them at the gallery opening, but Emma had painted them with their backs to the viewer, looking out at a room full of people engaged with the art on the walls. There was something powerful about the composition, the way It suggested that their story was expanding outward, touching other lives. It's beautiful, Em. It's hope, Emma corrected. Not just our hope, but hope for everyone who sees the art, everyone who needs to know that broken things can be fixed and lost things can be found. Marcus kissed the top of his daughter's head. I love you, Emma Rodriguez Blackwood. I love you too, Dad. Both of you. As Marcus turned off the lights and headed to his own room, he paused at the window that looked out over the backyard. The butterfly garden Emma had designed was beginning to bloom with spring flowers. In a few months, the monarchs would return, drawn by the milkweed and wildflowers Emma had planted specifically for them. Marcus thought about the flood that had brought Virginia into their lives, about the crisis that had led to their reunion, about all the small choices and large coincidences that had aligned to make this moment possible. Some people might call it luck, or fate, or divine intervention. Marcus preferred to think of it as grace, the kind that arrived not when you deserved it, but when you needed it most. He'd lost everything once and found it again, transformed but recognizable. He'd learned that families weren't just about blood or law or convention. They were about choice and commitment and the daily decision to show up for each other. They were about seeing people completely and loving them anyway. In the morning, there would be soccer games and grocery shopping and homework help. There would be Virginia's mother to meet and art school applications to research and all the ordinary challenges of raising a teenager in the 21st century. But tonight, Marcus fell asleep to the sound of Emma humming while she painted, and the knowledge that tomorrow they would wake up together under the same roof they all called home. The house on Elm Street had become more than Marcus had ever imagined possible. It wasn't just shelter, but sanctuary, not just a place to live, but a place to thrive. It held 3 lives that had intersected in the most unexpected way and chosen to grow together rather than apart. And if sometimes drivers passing by noticed the warm light spilling from the windows, the sound of laughter carrying across the yard, the sight of a man, a woman, and a teenage girl working together in a butterfly garden, they might have wondered about the story of the family inside. They might have sensed that this was a place where broken things were mended, where lost was found, where hope took root and grew into something beautiful and strong. But mostly, neighbors just smiled and waved, recognizing the simple truth that love, in all its forms, made the whole community brighter. And in a world that often felt divided and uncertain, the house on Elm Street stood as proof that sometimes, against all odds, everything works out exactly as it should. 2 years after the community center opened on a crisp October afternoon, Marcus stood in the same parking lot where he'd first pulled Virginia from her flooded BMW. The shopping center had been renovated since then, the old asphalt replaced, with permeable pavement designed to prevent future flooding. But Marcus could still pinpoint the exact spot where their lives had intersected that stormy morning. He wasn't alone. Emma, now 15 and taller than Virginia, stood beside him, sketching the space with quick, confident strokes. Virginia sat on a nearby bench, reading through applications for the latest round of community center scholarships. It had become a tradition of sorts, this annual pilgrimage to the place where everything changed. "You know what's funny?" Emma said, pausing in her sketching to look around the transformed space. "I used to think that day was about Dad saving you from drowning, but really, you were all drowning in different ways." Marcus turned to look at his daughter, struck once again by her ability to see truth in complexity. At 15, Emma had developed into a remarkable young woman, her artistic talent matched by an emotional intelligence that consistently surprised him. She'd endured therapy, family counseling, and the normal turbulence of adolescence, emerging stronger and more self-aware than many adults. "How do you mean?" Virginia asked, setting aside her papers to give Emma her full attention. Emma gestured toward the spot where the BMW had been trapped. Virginia, you were drowning in your past, in the company, in the life that was supposed to make you happy, but didn't. Dad was drowning in grief and guilt about losing me, and I was drowning in a system that told me I wasn't worth fighting for. She turned back to her sketch, adding shadows beneath the trees that had been planted where the parking lot's low point used to be. But the crazy thing is, nobody actually saved anybody else. You all saved yourselves. You just gave each other permission to do it. Marcus felt something click into place. A puzzle piece he hadn't realized was missing. You think that's what it was? Permission? I know it was. Emma's pencil moved steadily across the paper. Virginia gave Dad permission to believe he could get me back. Dad gave Virginia permission to be part of a family again, and you both gave me permission to hope that I could have a real home. Virginia stood and walked to where Emma was sketching, studying the drawing over her shoulder. So, the rescue in the flood wasn't really the rescue at all. Exactly, Emma said. The flood just got everyone in the same place at the same time. The real rescue took months, maybe years. Marcus watched his daughter work, adding details to her sketch that transformed the simple parking lot into something deeper. She drew not just the physical space, but the emotional geography of their story, the invisible currents that had carried them toward each other and then bound them together. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, Emma continued, because of my college application essays. Everyone wants to know about overcoming adversity, about defining moments, and I keep coming back to this. There was no single moment when everything changed. It was 1,000 tiny moments of choosing trust over fear. She gestured toward the bench where Virginia had been sitting. Like when Virginia kept coming to dinner even when it was awkward, or when Dad let me rage about the Hoffmans without trying to fix my anger, or when I decided to call Virginia Mom that first time, and she cried but didn't make a big deal about it. Marcus remembered that moment. Emma had been sick with the flu, delirious with fever, and had called out for Mom when Virginia was the one sitting beside her bed. Virginia had held Emma's hand and sung the same lullabies she used to sing to Sarah, and when Emma woke up the next morning, she'd said, "Thank you, Mom," as naturally as breathing. They'd never discussed it, never made it official with ceremony or conversation. It had simply become true. "The thing about drowning," Emma said, shading in the background of her sketch, "is that you can't save someone who's panicking. You have to wait for them to calm down enough to be rescued, or you all go under together." Virginia sat back down on the bench, and Marcus noticed she was wiping tears from her eyes. "Emma Rodriguez Blackwood, when did you become so wise?" "I had good teachers," Emma replied with a grin, "and a lot of therapy." Marcus laughed, then grew thoughtful. "You know what I realize now? I spent 3 years thinking I'd failed as a father because I couldn't keep the system from taking you away, but maybe the real failure would have been giving up on getting you back. And I spent 10 years thinking I was honoring Sarah's memory by closing myself off from love," Virginia added. "But Sarah would have wanted me to love again. She would have wanted me to be part of a family." Emma finished her sketch and held it up for them to see. She'd drawn the 3 of them standing in the parking lot, but instead of the realistic representation Marcus expected, she'd painted them as trees. Their roots intertwined beneath the surface, while their branches reached toward each other above, creating a canopy of protection and growth. "This is how I see us," Emma explained. "Not as people who were saved, but as people who chose to grow together. Our roots go deep now, deeper than the flood, deeper than the custody case, deeper than any single dramatic moment." Marcus studied the drawing, understanding flooding through him like sunlight breaking through clouds. "You're saying love isn't a rescue?" Love is cultivation, Emma corrected. It's daily care and attention and choosing to stay even when the soil gets muddy. Virginia reached out and took both their hands. So, what we have isn't a fairy tale. It's better than a fairy tale, Emma said firmly. It's real. Fairy tales end with happily ever after, but real love is happily ever after, and also through arguments about curfew and disagreements about college choices and the time Virginia tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner and set off every smoke alarm in the house. Maur. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the parking lot where their story had begun. Marcus looked around the renovated space, noting how the improvements had made it more beautiful, but also more functional. Like their family, it had been transformed not by erasing what came before, but by building something better on the same foundation. "I have something to tell you both," Virginia said, her voice taking on the tone she used for important announcements. "I've been offered a position with a consulting firm in Seattle. It would mean leaving Millbrook." Marcus felt his heart skip, but he forced himself to remain calm. "When?" "Next year, after Emma graduates. It's an incredible opportunity, working with non-profit organizations across the Pacific Northwest." Virginia looked between them carefully. "But I wanted to talk to you both before making any decision. Because this is my home now. You're my family." Emma was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You should take it." "Emma," Marcus started, but she held up her hand. "No, listen. 2 years ago, if Virginia had told us she was moving away, I would have panicked. I would have thought it meant she didn't really love us, that we weren't enough to keep her here." Emma turned to face Virginia fully. "But that was my 8-year-old brain talking. My 15-year-old brain knows that. Love doesn't mean never leaving. It means knowing you can leave and choosing to stay connected anyway." Virginia's eyes filled with tears again. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Besides, Seattle has an amazing art scene. I've been looking at the University of Washington for college anyway, and Dad could visit his consulting projects anywhere." Marcus blinked in surprise. "What consulting projects?" Emma grinned. "The ones you're going to start when you realize you don't want to work construction forever. You're incredibly good at project management, Dad. Half the community center renovation happened because you could translate between what Virginia's architects wanted and what the local contractors could actually do." Virginia nodded enthusiastically. "Emma's right. I've been meaning to talk to you about that. There's a huge need for people who can manage community development projects, people who understand both the technical and human sides of building." Marcus looked between his daughter and Virginia, realizing they'd been planning something without him. But instead of feeling excluded, he felt supported, cared for in a way that invited growth rather than demanded it. "So you're saying we could all end up in Seattle?" "I'm saying we could all end up wherever we choose to be," Emma corrected. "Together or apart, we're still family. That's what I've been trying to tell you. The rescue isn't about never being separated again. It's about knowing the connection is strong enough to survive distance." As the sun began to set over the parking lot, casting long shadows across the space where their lives had intersected, Marcus felt the final piece of understanding fall into place. They hadn't been saved by a dramatic rescue in a flood. They'd been saved by the slow, persistent work of choosing each other every day after the flood. The water that had threatened to drown them had actually carried them to where they needed to be. But the real work, the work of building a family, had happened in the quiet moments since then, in shared meals and homework help and art projects, in arguments resolved and trust rebuilt, in the 1,000 small decisions to stay open, to stay connected, to keep growing together. Emma closed her sketchbook and stood, brushing off her jeans. Ready to go home? Home, not the house on Elm Street. though they would always love that place, not any particular address or city or state. Home was what they'd built together, what they carried with them wherever they went. Marcus and Virginia rose from the bench, and the three of them walked toward the car, their shadows stretching long behind them. They'd come to this parking lot as strangers drowning in separate sorrows. They were leaving as family, rooted in love that had grown strong enough to weather any storm. "One more thing," Emma said as they reached the car. "I want to add a plaque to this parking lot, something that acknowledges what happened here." "What would it say?" Virginia asked. Emma smiled. "Here, 3 people stopped drowning and learned to swim." As they drove home through the familiar streets of Millbrook, the late afternoon sun painting everything golden, Marcus understood that their story hadn't ended with the custody hearing or the community center opening, or even with this moment of realization. Their story would continue to unfold in Seattle or wherever life took them, because they'd learned the most important truth of all, that love isn't a destination you reach, but a journey you choose to take together, one day at a time. The house on Elm Street would always be special to them, the place where they'd learned to be a family, but they were taking the most important thing with them wherever they went, the unshakable knowledge that they belonged to each other, that they'd been chosen and had chosen in return, that they were home wherever they were together, and in the end, that was the greatest rescue of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.